Okay, guys, let's talk about solving inequalities. Now, solving inequalities is almost the exact same thing as solving an equation. Okay, so you follow the rules of solving an equation, except for one thing. Okay, when you multiply or divide by a negative, in an inequality, you have to flip the sign of the inequality. Okay, so let me do a couple of examples. Okay, so if I have negative 2x greater than 4, I'm going to divide both sides by negative 2. But because I divided by a negative, I've got to remember to flip that inequality sign. So I'm going to have x less than negative 2. All right. So with these, you're also going to have to graph them and give the interval notation. So x less than negative 2 would be parentheses on negative 2 to the left. And the interval notation would be negative infinity to negative 2. Okay, this is why I told you when you were solving equations to make sure you always have the variable on the left, because this one kind of gives you a little bit of a hint. Okay, if it's less than, you can shade left if the variable's on the left. Okay, if it's pointing to the right and the variable's on the left, then you shade right. Okay, so that makes this a little bit easier. Let's do another one. Alright, what if I've got negative 3x plus 1 greater than negative 8? Alright, so to solve this equation, inequality, you would subtract 1. So you would have negative 3x greater than negative 9. Let's divide both sides by negative 3. But because we divided by a negative, we have to change the inequality sign. So it's going to become less than. So we would have x less than positive 3. So less than, since the variable's on the left, is going to be parentheses to the left. So it would be negative infinity to positive 3. Alright, just one more so that I make sure you understand that. Alright, let's do one with the variable on the both sides. So let's say that I had 2x plus 5 greater than or equal to 4x plus 9. So again, I'm moving that variable to the left-hand side of the inequality. So I'm going to subtract 4x from both sides. So I get negative 2x plus 5 greater than or equal to 9. So I'm going to subtract 5 from both sides. So I get negative 2x greater than or equal to 4. Divide both sides by negative 2. But because I divided by a negative, I have to change the inequality sign. So I'm going to have x less than or equal to negative 2. So that graph looks like, this time, a bracket on negative 2. And we're shading to the left. So my interval notation would be from negative infinity to negative 2 with a bracket. Alright, Just make sure that you're either multiplying or dividing by a negative. So there's a couple of questions on your homework that just say, do you flip the sign? Okay, so if I have x plus 5 less than 2, do I flip the sign? No, because you're subtracting 5. Alright, do I flip the sign when I have 5 minus x less than 2? Alright, if we're going to work this out, we would say subtract 5, negative x less than negative 3. We would have to divide by a negative here. So, yes, I would have to flip the sign. So if I had negative 3x plus 2 greater than 7, I would subtract 2. So I would have negative 3x greater than 5. I would have to divide by a negative. So we're dividing by a negative. Yes, we would have to flip the sign. Okay, the next part of this lesson has you just solving inequalities, graphing them, and giving interval notation. Alright, so let's do a couple of those examples. So let's say that I had 5 times x minus 2 plus 8 less than 13x plus 7. Okay, so let's think about this. The first thing I'm going to have to do on this one is distribute that negative. So I would have 5 times x is 5x. 5 times negative 2 is negative 10. Plus 8 less than 13x plus 7. So that's 5x minus 2 less than 13x plus 7. So I'm going to subtract 13x from both sides. So I get negative 8x minus 2 less than 7. I'm going to add 2 to both sides. So I get negative 8x less than 9. Divide both sides by negative 8. Since I'm dividing by a negative, we have to flip the inequality sign. So I've got greater than, and that's going to be x, and that's just going to be negative 9 over 8. Okay? So now when I graph it, I've got negative 9 over 8. This time it's pointing to the right with the variable on the left, so we've got to shade right. And it's going to be parentheses. So you've got parentheses, negative 9 over 8 to infinity. And that would be my answer. Okay? Now, let's do another example. This time let's use some fractions. So let's say that I had 2x plus 1 over 3 minus x plus 3 over 7 less than 5 over 14. Okay, some of you have asked me how do we make sure we get the common denominator. And again, I'm going to say this. Use your least common multiples, and that way you can tell whether or not you've got your least common multiple, which helps you get your least common denominator. And again, I would start with the biggest number and do its multiples so that you have, it's easier to find the least common multiple that they have in common. So I'm going to start with 14, 28, 42. No, yeah, 42. Now wait a minute. I think 3 goes into 42. 3 goes into 42 14 times. 7 goes into 42 6 times. And 14 goes into 42 3 times. So my least common multiple is 42. So that is my least common denominator. So I'm going to multiply everything by 42. Alright, so 3 goes into 42 14 times. So I've got 14 times 2x plus 1 minus 7 goes into 42 6 times. So I've got 6 times x plus 3 less than 14 goes into 42 3 times. So I've got 3 times 5. If I distribute here, 14 times 2x is 28x. 14 times 1 is 14. I'm distributing a negative 6. So negative 6 times x is negative 6x. Negative 6 times 3 is negative 18. And 3 times 5 is 15. If I combine like terms here, 28x minus 6x is 22x. 14 minus 18 is negative 4, less than 15. Now let's add 4 to both sides. So we get 22x less than 19. I'm going to divide by 22. I did not divide by a negative here, so this one stays. Alright, so I'm going to have x less than 19 over 22. So the graph is going to be 19 over 22, parentheses, shaded to the left. So it would be negative infinity to 19 over 22. Alright, just make sure when you're doing these problems, again, you should be able to check your answer by plugging it in to make sure you've got it correct, or you can pick a number that is in the solution set to plug it in to see whether or not it's true, so make sure you have the shading right. If you have any questions, just please let me know. Thanks.